Hi, I'm Dave from Boy in a Band. A while ago I made a Facebook post in which I asked people to send over research for a topic they considered important. I was looking through the responses until one of them made me double take because I didn't think the research was real at first. It pointed me towards China. I don't think that's racist, I think it just sets the tone. Specifically a Chinese boot camp, but not for the military, for recovering internet addicts. So I was like, whoa, that seems pretty damn extreme, and not just because the military drills made this one kid so exhausted that he forgot his directions, but the fact that China declared internet addiction to be a clinical disorder. Some studies think over 1/3 of people could have an internet addiction. And judging by the fact that you're currently on the internet, I'm guessing that percentage goes up a bit for you. The rest of the research clarified this in an article showing that up to 38% of people would rather have internet access than basic utilities like water and heat. Which initially I scoffed at, and I'm English so I know how to scoff at something. And the scoffing was warranted when I noticed that I couldn't find the original source of the article used online anywhere. But then I thought, hang on, would I rather have internet or basic utilities? Like, genuinely ask yourself that question now. Which would you prefer? Internet or convenient heat and water? Because so much of my life is lived online through social media. It's how I keep in touch with friends, how I entertain myself, how I learn about the world. And honestly, I think I would actually prefer to huddle up in blankets and take trips to the nearest well instead of giving up my internet access. Even though I can logically see how extreme it is to say something like that, I still feel it. And this realization came as quite a shock to me. But addicted is a really strong word. Like, what medically classifies someone as an addict, as opposed to someone just really wanting to do something? Like, I enjoy maple syrup, but I don't think that makes me a syrup addict, right? Well, the American Society of Addiction Medicine says it's a disease of brain reward, motivation, memory, and related circuitry. Dysfunction in these circuits leads to characteristic biological, psychological, social, and Jesus Christ, could you be more vague? Okay, wait, it specifies what those characteristics are. So it looks like if you can't stop, you crave it, and you aren't rational enough to see the problems it's causing, then get weirdly angry when people explain that, the medical field considers you addicted. Well, the rubbish thing is, by that definition, I might actually be addicted. I find myself in social media all the frickin' time, to the point where I'm wasting time I could be spending being productive. Sometimes I'm not even happy while I'm on it. And being super honest, there have definitely been instances where people have talked to me in real life while I'm faffing about online, and I've snapped at them even though there was no reason to. But then I started to think, is it really that bad? Just how bad could it be? I mean, I really like the internet. Is there any real reason to consider fixing this if I'm clinically addicted? That's pretty much exactly what an addict would say. Well, it turns out there are quite a lot of reasons. For starters, a study found it can make you hate how you look. The more participants used the internet and social media, the more likely they were to feel ashamed of their body, to feel dissatisfied with their weight, and to have lower self-esteem. And we can actually go more specific and say which parts of the internet are the worst for your self-esteem. Another study split participants and got them to use either Facebook, an online fashion magazine, or an appearance-neutral content control website and measured their mood afterwards. Wait a second, what exactly is an appearance-neutral content control website? That just makes me imagine like grey blocks, 90s HTML tables, and some text describing the website that they're on. Welcome to my cool website. Oh, they used a craft website? This craft website? Are you kidding me? I already wonder how I could ever live up to these unrealistic standards. I could never be as stunning as these 10 stunning flaws that will knock my socks off. This study is flawed. But it found that while dissatisfaction with body shape was affected more by the fashion site, a desire to change their face, hair and skin was affected mostly by Facebook. But then I noticed something which meant I didn't have to worry. Both of those studies were entirely done on females. And do I look like a girl to you? No! One thing I've heard a lot is that using social media makes you narcissistic. And in a study of 13,000 people, they found there actually was a correlation between social media use and grandiose narcissism. But is there any way to be sure that the narcissists didn't exist already and their egos aren't just all gravitating towards Facebook? Well, another study showed that while it is correlated, Facebook use didn't significantly increase levels of narcissism. So that one actually is a myth.
Myth busted.
Then one of the big negatives comes when relationships end. Facebook stalking, or if you want to sound unnecessary, necessarily like a spy, interpersonal electronic surveillance is super common. In one study, 88% of people creep on their exes post-breakup. And even creepier than that, 70% of people who no longer had access to their partner's profiles said they tried to creep using other means, like logging into a friend's account. That one freaking shocked me. The problem is, Facebook stalking is actually illegal. No, it isn't, I'm lying, but it has a really high correlation with people's current distress. Sorry, I didn't mean to worry you. Now, correlation is not causation. Just because a lot of people in wheelchairs are disabled doesn't mean wheelchairs go around breaking people's legs. That would be horrifying. But it is super interesting to know that people who were doing the Facebook stalking were more distressed and longed for an ex-partner way more. Again, correlation, not causation. You'd have to do a study where you encouraged half the participants to stalk the hell out of their exes to find out whether it was causative. And one thing that made my jaw drop when researching this, when you change your relationship status, Facebook itself actually prompts you to erase the person from your life. Either there are some really considerate Facebook employees, or they just don't want to see a Daily Mail article reading "Man kills ex-girlfriend after repeated stalking on Facebook, totally Zuckerberg's fault." And perhaps the biggest one, Facebook could potentially cause depression. One study found there was a definite linear relationship between depression and increased time on social media. Compared with those who checked least frequently, participants who reported most frequently checking social media throughout the week had 2.7 times the likelihood of depression. Again, not 100% sure it's causative, but it's a pretty freaking strong correlation. Another issue is to do with sleep. A study monitored the devices of 76 undergraduates, God help the scientists that had to look through the list of sites they visited, and found a clear correlation between heavy Facebook use and lack of sleep, poor mood, and disengagement. Well, we've got all this data, but how certain can I be of how addicted I am? That must be out of my mind! How has the scientific community chosen to measure internet or social media addiction? This is Kimberly Young.
Drugs, alcohol, and sex.
She was the psychologist who published the first paper on internet addiction and developed the internet addiction test.
So I posted a small survey online. I took the same clinical criteria that one would use to define pathological gambling, and I just substituted the word internet, and I just wanted to see what I would find. Well, back when I probably had 2 emails a month, I had over 50 emails, all from people telling me how they lost their jobs and their marriages. Students across the country having problems with the very tool that they were being encouraged to use. It made me wonder if people could get addicted to the internet in the same way we talk about drugs, alcohol, and sex.
You can take the IAT at the link in the description and get your score to get a feel of how addicted you are. I got 67 out of 100, which means I've got problems, god damn it. But then I'm probably going to be higher when it comes to the internet because so much of my career relies on using it. Is there anything more specific? Yes. The Bergen Facebook Addiction Scale, also called the BitFaze by no one, is used in a bunch of studies, including this one which showed Facebook use correlated with lower happiness, this one which found Facebook addiction was negatively related to satisfaction with life, and this one from Turkey which has loads of little squiggles on the letters. I got 11, which means I just scraped in there this time. Some super interesting things come from comparing that with the personality test used commonly in academic research. And no, to all the ENFPs out there, it's not the Myers-Briggs. That's a popular test with the kids these days, but it's not really used in academic research. The test that is used academically is the Neopets test, which measures 5 aspects of personality. It's actually Neopie-R, but wouldn't it be great if there was just this widely used academic personality test which paired you with a Neopet? I'd be a scorchio. You'd be a jub. But yeah, those 5 personality traits each relate to different Facebooking habits, as mentioned in this study by Cicely Schuh Andreasen and Torbjorn Torsheim.
It's Torbjorn!
Yes, I included that bit for the Overwatch joke. For instance, those with higher extroversion joined almost twice as many Facebook groups, and interestingly tended to be slightly higher on the BitFaze. I would have guessed it was introverts that would be more addicted to Facebook, but nope. And high conscientiousness led to a much lower addiction score, probably because they're too busy doing work and meeting deadlines. Pfft, geeks. But this is all from surveys. Is there any more physical way to be sure of how addicted you are? Yes, and it's freaking cool as hell. There's this one study where participants navigated Facebook while scientists measured physiological indicators of emotion from people's freaking skin. Because it turns out, skin momentarily becomes a better conductor of electricity when people are physiologically aroused. People say that when they're excited, they're buzzing. Turns out they literally are. And guess what they called the electrical impulse data tracker? The buzz feed. Okay, no, they didn't, but they should. And they found something pretty specific from this. Participants experienced more pleasantness during the course of social searching than they experienced during social browsing. But Dave, what's the difference between the The difference being social browsing is looking for general information about friends and strangers, and social searching is looking for specific information about offline acquaintances with the goal of knowing them better. The study showed that buzz diminished during the course of both social browsing and social searching. They even had a graph of how quickly it went. Look at it.
Look at this graph.
Sorry. So this study actually found something useful. If you want to use Facebook healthily, decide to use it by picking a specific friend you know you want to check up on. You'll statistically be happier than if you just scroll through your feed and share some video of some edgelord rhythmically complaining about the school system. How did this happen? Why am I and so many other people potentially addicted? One of the strongest hooks is to do with the thrill of unpredictable rewards. A super famous psychologist whose name sounds like a bloke who would start a fight at a local pub, B.F. Skinner.
Right, mate, you going down the pub later? Yeah, sound, mate. Wait, is that B.F. Skinner fella gonna be there?
Yeah, mate, I heard he's coming down tonight for a pint.
Then nah, mate, I ain't gonna hang about for a fight to kick off. I'm just gonna go home and watch Hearthstone videos on YouTube.
Ha! My Dave into twisting never. What will this bloke think of next?
B.F. Skinner did a bunch of studies on how behaviour that is reinforced tends to be repeated, and behaviour that is not reinforced or is punished tends to die out. Yeah, that seems bloody obvious, but the less obvious part was where he discovered that having an unpredictable reward made people more motivated to do something than a predictable one. Isn't that freaking weird? If you 100% know you're going to get a cookie if you pull a lever, then you'll get bored of the lever more quickly than if you have a 50% chance of getting a cookie. I know, what a cookie. Because you never know whether you'll be rewarded with likes or messages or your exes posting depressing Facebook statuses, Facebook is making you want to return to the site out of curiosity way more than if you knew every time you went there you'd get 3 likes on the last post. Like that was it, just 3 likes every time. Kinda nice, but just 3. Another hook is called FOMO, which is not an ASCII monster face holding a baseball bat with nails in it. Can you see it? Really? Just me? Okay. Fear of missing out is a psychological phenomenon where I don't need to explain this. You're not an idiot. And one of the things that could be good, could be bad, is how some people who lack social skills, who struggle to meet people in real life, are able to interact more safely and easily online. It could help them learn how to talk to people, or it could lead them into a downward spiral because they've become so hopelessly addicted to social media that they don't even consider going out and interacting with a single other human being as a viable option for the rest of their life. You know, swings and roundabouts. Well, some people aren't sure it exists at all. One study found internet addiction often appeared in people affected by other mental health issues. So maybe it's not an addiction to technology, but instead a symptom of some other issue, like depression, that manifests by spending a metric crap ton of time on technology. They found the time sequence between internet-related problems and other mental health problems varies from person to person. Like some people might spend 7 weeks straight looking at sexy League of Legends fan art before they're depressed, whereas other people look at it after. And this could be dangerous. If it turns out internet addiction is just a symptom of depression or something, then all this effort going towards treating internet addiction directly might not be solving the root issue. Another reason it might be so popularly called an addiction is because it's freaking fantastic clickbait. Something titled, "My son is an internet addict," is way more clickable than "My son has crippling depression." I mean, when would something involving crippling depression go viral?
I have crippling depression.
Okay, well, what's the most specific proof that this is a real thing? Turns out internet addicts have abnormal white matter, not to be confused with grey matter or Black Lives Matter. Grey matter is where all the cells and synapses are, you know, the ones you see in those old school dodgy CGI brain zoom-ins, whereas white matter is the pathways connecting those together. Apparently in internet addicts, those pathways are disrupted in areas relating to emotions, decision-making, and self-control. So we can see the brains are physically different. Addicts aren't just lying about being different to have an excuse to watch more meme compilations.
I have crippling depression.
Classic meme. And this disruption is powerful. Researchers found in a study of MRIs of people's brains that Facebook cues were more potent triggers in people's brains than traffic signs. But when it comes to defining a real-life mental disorder, the holy grail is the DSM, which stands for the Super Manual. The DSM is what most psychiatrists, psychologists, and therapists use to define what disorders exist. It's basically the closest thing we have to a consensus on mental health issues. The latest version released is the DSM-5, which came out in 2013, which after much heated debate did not class internet addiction as a thing. So your average psychiatrist isn't likely to diagnose you with internet addiction disorder. However, as you've heard, there's a crap ton of data which shows how the internet and social media, when used in the wrong way, can be seriously destructive and addictive. Just because it's not in this psychiatric Bible now doesn't mean it won't be eventually, and it doesn't mean it's not a real, potentially dangerous thing. But this doesn't mean it can't be treated.
So how do we fix it?
There's a bunch of ways that studies have shown can help with this kind of addiction. First is the more obvious step of setting boundaries, reducing your intake and replacing it with something else. Especially important since the average 18 to 36-year-old spends 17.8 hours a day consuming media. Wait, hang on, what the hell? That leaves 6.2 hours for food and sleep. How is that even possible? Okay, let me check this source. Oh, this study comes from a marketing company who has an incentive to make people think that people consume a ridiculous amount of media. And they don't explain beyond saying it was a survey what questions they asked. And if I Google the company who did the study during the month it was supposedly done with the number of people in the study, it just comes up with a bunch of irrelevant French crap. God damn it, doesn't anyone check their freaking sources before posting? Oh my god. Okay, well, let's go back to that whole social media is strongly correlated with depression thing. So how about this one? Yep, funded by National Institute of Mental Health, controls for a bunch of factors, strong data with an explanation of how they got it, boring ass layout with no consideration for the readability. Yep, this looks like some proper science to me. So setting boundaries is worth doing. This can be done with willpower by just saying, oh, I'll just use my internet on a set schedule, but if you're anything like me, lol, that will not work. There are some great apps designed for parents to restrict their kids' phone and tablet usage. I use this one, Screen Time, and I got a friend to come up with the password so I can't just turn it off. Or on your PC, there are apps like Rescue Time, which I use, and Cold Turkey, which I've also used, which automatically close sites after using them for a certain amount per day or during certain times. Or on your Mac, I don't know man, Google it, I'm not your dad. This study examined the treatment outcomes of CBT for internet addicts. They evaluated the patients on the 3rd, 8th and 12th sessions, and apparently most people could manage their addiction by the 8th session. And not only that, they still hadn't relapsed 6 months after the therapy ended. So yeah, therapy is effective. Medication can also be an option. Bupropion is a generic form of the drug Wellbutrin. That drug apparently reduced severity and duration of internet addiction and significantly reduced depression in those individuals. I found a study showing passive Facebook use, like just scrolling through the newsfeed, decreases affective well-being. The decrease was not found in people using Facebook actively, like posting and commenting and messaging. Now my first thought was, oh, maybe it's just the people who feel like using Facebook passively are already depressed. But the scientists had already thought of that. The study was causative, not correlative. Finally something freaking causative. And the reason this is so useful is we spend more time passively using Facebook than actively using Facebook. The people in the study used Facebook passively about 50% more than they used it actively when they were just doing what they wanted. So people spend most of their time on Facebook engaging in a behavior that reduces their effective well-being. It kind of sucks to have to tell you this since I've made a bunch of money from people who found me by scrolling aimlessly through the internet, but it comes down to this. If you interact with social media, you are choosing to make yourself happier. If you are not interacting with it, you are choosing to make yourself unhappier. Every individual scroll through your Facebook feed, you are voluntarily flicking away a small piece of your happiness. So if you're anything like me, right now you'll have this temporary burst of motivation to be like, yeah, I'm gonna do something about it. So grab the hell out of that before it goes. Find a partner to hold you accountable. Install something that blocks the sites after too much usage. Delete the bloody game. That's how I quit wasting time on League of Legends 2 years ago. I'll put links to the programs I mentioned in the description and let me know how it goes, because letting me know would count as an active, healthy use of social media. Cheers for watching and have a nice day.